Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fireside chat, where we discuss cloud adoption by the financial services industry and talk about how customers are addressing security and compliance challenges in their journey to the cloud. My name is Ram Boreda, and I'm with the Office of CTO for Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks. With me today, I have Jennifer Code from AWS. Jen, can you introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ram. Hello, everyone. I'm Jen Code, part of Financial Services Cloud Governance team here at AWS. And I'm really happy to be here alongside one of our key AWS partners, Palo Alto Networks. And we're going to share some observations and trends that we're seeing across the industry for our customers who are adopting cloud.
Thank you, Jen. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated cloud adoption in many industries, including financial services. So this shift from on-premise to cloud and also working from home at the same time means development and support activities are now fully remote without the benefit of in-person collaboration and oversight. We've seen many organizations that jump-started their migration to the cloud have had to step back and rethink how they approached security and compliance, since traditional approaches and tools used in their on-prem environments don't directly apply to the cloud. Just as a quick example, we are seeing increased use of automated security controls and continuous monitoring of cloud environments. So, Jen, from your perspective at AWS, what are some of the biggest security concerns you hear from customers, and especially customers in financial services as they move to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can confidently say, without exception, every single one of my customers ask about security, typically the first thing that we talk about. Although with that said, while we're getting a lot of questions, deeper questions, the questions themselves have not changed that dramatically, even with this big uptick in cloud adoption. Although I find on the plus side, my customers are far more security savvy. So the questions go into more depth, or they may come with a few options. But what are those key areas of interest? And they kind of come down to four main themes. So the first is often the threat landscape. There's always something in the press, something in the news, and that is typically where our customers lead. And they're curious on how we as AWS stay on top of that, especially global. Look at the global marketplace and where our infrastructure is, but really, how do we stay on top of it with the emerging security threats? From there, it's about new services, new partners, new best practice. So if we can stay on top of it, how do we help them stay on top of it? So really with, any new tricks, tips, or tools out of the box solutions, that's really going to help give confidence to our customers that their environment stays secure and will be secure over time, as you mentioned, with that ongoing monitoring. Regulatory compliance, of course, that's the third one. That's always a hot topic for good reason. Critically important that we make sure that we understand what those rules are, that our customers understand, and that they're always able to satisfy evidence being in compliance. And of course, recognizing our customers are leveraging cloud in large part to really drive their digital transformation. They're looking for help on how they can move fast and stay secure. So really that kind of business side of enabling that speed. Those are really the four main things that we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. So all of those are very valid concerns, Jen. So let's start with digging into the first one about emerging security issues. So as a security practitioner, and I have been one for a long time, you have to pay attention on two critical fronts, which are both rapidly changing. On one hand, there are hundreds of new features and new services launched by AWS every month. And on the other hand, it seems like every day there's a new threat vector or a cyber attack or something to worry about there. So what do you tell customers, who are worried about not being able to keep up with either or both?
Yeah, I tell those customers they're in very good company. The pace of technology change, it can certainly be very intimidating, which is why, we really focus on automation and helping customers so that we can take some of that thinking, out of the way and help them focus on their business. But this is exactly why I really appreciate when customers proactively seek guidance on security. I like to comment back to them that the best technology environment is a no surprise environment. So let's make that our goal. But in general, what I start with is our shared responsibility model, which I'm sure for most of you on this call is a refresher, as it is with most of the customers. But what I like to do, if I anchor the discussion here, it allows me to share updates in a few areas. First, I can emphasize security features that have been added or enhanced within AWS infrastructure and our services. So we refer to that as security of the cloud. So that's the AWS side of the shared responsibility model. And these are those core elements that are validated through our assessments by external auditors to satisfy a range of industry standards and regulatory requirements. Then I move to security in the cloud, or the customer side of the shared responsibility model. And there I go into what are those new tools? What are those new best practices? Do I have additional guidance? Are there new partners that we're working with that really will help our customers leverage in delivering security for their applications and their data that they're putting in the cloud? And for both sides, I really emphasize the need to prioritize training and education and really make sure that the knowledge across the entire organization is high on cloud, which really does help reduce the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We refer to that as FUD, to really make sure that, yes, you can be secure. It takes work. You need to stay on top of it, but let's make sure that people aren't unnecessarily afraid to do that. So we really proactively have these conversations. But ultimately, why I like to lead with the shared responsibility model is it reinforces awareness, and it also helps to avoid any confusion about where responsibility starts and where it ends, which is so important because the last thing we need in these uncertain times with all this pace of change is to have any misunderstanding of, oh, I thought that was your side. But that really helps reinforce that. And of course, in addition to our native features, we're coming out with change all the time, but there's a number of partners, including, of course, Palo Alto networks and all the changes and enhancements and offerings that you are bringing to the market. So, Ram, I know there's mutual customers or certainly prospective customers on both our sides. Is this similar to how you approach it? And what do you see and hear from customers as you work with them?
Yeah, certainly. So before I address your direct question, I should say that, if I got $1 every time I, led with or when reviewed the shared responsibility model with our customers, I would be so rich today. Yes, back to your question. So we do have, and we share a number of mutual customers, many of them in the financial services vertical. And before I dig into the integration between our offerings, let me share some findings, to echo your what you said on the cloud threat landscape. So from our perspective, security incidents and threats continue to be centered around these three primary areas, right? The first one is data breaches, which, as you know, has resulted in hundreds of millions of stolen accounts and exposure of sensitive data. The second is account hijacking, where malicious actors get in using stolen credentials or access keys. And once they get in, they can launch any number of attacks. And we've seen a lot of those recently in terms of ransomware or denial of service. And then the last is risks from cloud misconfigurations and accidental exposure because of that. So we know from the shared responsibility model that you alluded to, that customers are ultimately responsible for what they do in the cloud, right? How they configure their users, how they configure their applications, where and how they store their data, how they protect it. All of this is customers' responsibility. And you may have heard this quote, or I'm sure you've heard this quote from Gartner saying that 99%, and that's a bold statement. So 99% of the cloud security failures will be because of customers' actions or inactions. So to help customers enforce security in the cloud, we have a dedicated cloud security research team within Prisma Cloud, which continuously monitors all new services and features launched by AWS. This team tracks the security best practices, including the guidance that you mentioned, and all the guidelines from AWS. This team is also responsible for converting these guidelines into security guardrails that we deliver as out-of-the-box policies. And last time I checked, we had over 750 out-of-the-box policies. And of course, we keep adding new policies as we research new AWS services, as we understand new threat vectors, new attack vectors, from malicious actors. On top of all of this, we work closely with Unit 42, the Palo Alto Network's Unit 42 research team, with over 200 global threat intelligence researchers with world-class expertise in adversary tools, techniques, and tactics. And we recently added Crypsys team to this Unit 42. And Crypsys provides rapid incident response and recovery, in addition to providing proactive cloud security assessments.
Wow, that's a really, really impressive set of controls. And I have read that Gartner report, and that's quite a sobering statistic, which in some ways, when you think about it, cloud is really no longer a new technology. It's AWS has been around 15 years and kind of continuing to age with that. But, we're still seeing customers, some very early in their journey. But I know you, in your role in particular, you spend a lot of time meeting and talking directly with customers. And I'm sure you have a range, some who are new and just starting to get going, but I'm sure you have a few really advanced customers who are really using Prisma Cloud and other features, really robustly. Can you share a bit more color on those conversations and maybe some advice that you hear from some of those advanced customers?
Yeah, certainly, Jen. So I can share some wisdom from them. The customers I speak with, many of them have been burned by this proliferation of security tools and point solutions in the on-premise world. And as we discussed earlier, they don't easily translate or scale well to the cloud. To share a quick stat, a typical large enterprise has anywhere between 50 to 75 security tools. So about 4 years ago, when we first, forayed into cloud security, as Palo Alto Networks, we decided to give customers that proverbial single pane of glass. And, these customers are asking for that single centralized console, single pane of glass to monitor and manage security for their entire cloud footprint, across hundreds or even thousands of accounts in some cases. They want a single solution that addresses a broad range of, cloud security and threat detection and compliance use cases. Mm-hmm. And, as you know, Prisma Cloud does provide that. It provides a very comprehensive cloud native security platform to help and manage security across multiple clouds, private clouds, public clouds, hybrid environments, including on-premise data centers. We do offer that single unified platform that helps secure the entire cloud stack, including infrastructure as service functions like EC2 instances or platform as service functions like Redshift, and then your complete compute infrastructure, including EC2 instances, containers, Lambda functions, on and on. We also provide full visibility into IAM users and their roles. We shine a bright light on overly permissive users and roles. And this helps customers in enforcing that principle of least privilege that all security teams strive for. so that they can control who can access what and when. And this really does help security teams in removing excessive permissions to reduce their attack surface.
Yeah.
So I must also mention that we recently launched a new module, a new capability called identity-based microsegmentation. And this is for the more modern cloud-native architectures that some of our advanced customers are already implementing or adopting. These cloud-native architectures with a ton of east-west traffic, especially a lot of traffic between containers, between microservices. On many occasions, there are many containers running on a single host, and it's not easy or scalable to implement IP address-based or IP-based access controls. So in these environments where customers are using microservices, containers, and PaaS functions like AWS Lambda or Redshift, we provide an identity-based microsegmentation capability. This essentially helps them extend the zero trust architecture to AWS and other clouds. And as customers and more customers adopt these containers and microservice mesh architectures, zero trust in the cloud really calls for and needs this new identity-based approach to control access and to prevent lateral movement of an attacker in case of a compromise. Let's move to the question you raised about compliance. Most customers, including financial services companies, also need to navigate many industry regulations. There are obviously a lot of them, and they keep changing or expanding. So Jen, how does AWS help these customers stay current with the latest compliance requirements?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a very complex answer because there's a lot of different aspects to it. So first, for AWS, I'm going to go back to the shared responsibility model we talked about before, because it's always a great place to start, is segment the conversation of what are we doing for AWS and our relationships, and how are we helping customers? And often those two overlap. So on the AWS side, we have an entire team of individuals that are dedicated to monitor industry trends. So they will establish and maintain regulatory relationships. They'll work with regulatory and authority. Not everything's a regulation. Some things come out as, there's some privacy restrictions and others that are a little bit different, but just the emerging requirements that we know our customers are going to need to evidence and satisfy. So it really helps us both understand where things are going, as well as establish strategies so that we can help our customers meet their assurance needs. Some may be in the way that we will produce our third-party audits or where we may get checks. Some may be in how we're going to help our customers collect evidence. So on our side, we have a tool called AWS Artifact that all of our customers should be aware of and know, but that is where we house all of our auditor issued reports, our control documentation. So all of that is available for customers to access and leverage in discussions with their auditors or in any of their oversight requirements of AWS. So that is a great resource for those materials. And then on top of that strong foundation for the in the cloud side of the shared responsibility model. So that's where we start talking about our services and features to then protect our customers' data and applications. So we have, you mentioned some of them earlier, but our identity and access management controls for least privilege. We have our security services such as guard duty for anomaly detection and monitoring. And then there's management and governance services, AWS Config or CloudTrail for some of that observability. So really it's that combination that helps make sure that it's one, get those controls in place, have them automated so that the controls are there, and then have the ability to read out in evidence. So we really want to make that as seamless as possible for our customers, because it can be, particularly with some of the changes, it can be a very complex space. And then, of course, on top of that, we have our partners that integrate seamlessly with AWS and really offer a much broader and richer set of protection, which is important. So, Ram, with that, kind of given the pace of change, we're seeing it globally. I'm sure you see different aspects. I've got to believe this is a very common topic of conversation, probably leading for both of us. So can you share some of the common concerns? Does, what I introduced resonate, and are there other solutions that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're very right about that. After gaining visibility into their cloud footprint, customers are asking about compliance. So compliance with both industry benchmarks like NIST or CIS, as well as regulatory standards like HIPAA and PCI are top of mind for our customers. And just like you recognized the need for a dedicated team, we've built a dedicated compliance and policy team that translates and interprets these complex is an understatement, interprets these complex compliance frameworks, some of which were written almost 20-30 years ago. So, prior to AWS being, formed, right? So we map these compliance requirements into controls for the 150 plus AWS services that we track. And with that, Prisma Cloud offers continuous compliance, posture monitoring, and reporting with extensive coverage for, again, last time I checked, we have about 20 plus compliance standards out of the box in the Prisma Cloud tool for standards like CIS, GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, 27001, NIST 800, NIST 853, PCI, SOC 2, CCPA, again, the list goes on. What some of our customers really love about Prisma Cloud is that it also supports custom compliance reporting, meaning they can write their own compliance standards, their own policies, map them to these compliance standards. And then in addition to providing this, continuous compliance reporting, we provide very rich contextual data and information and a 360-degree view for all the millions or probably 1 billion resources that we monitor for these customers. We provide investigation and, in many cases, auto remediation capabilities where without any human intervention, we can rectify the compliance violations. So this really speeds up the process of finding and fixing non-compliant or risky resources. Again, we are helping customers with their side of the shared responsibility model. And I often hear from customers that they need to monitor compliance posture for all of their environments, not only in real time, but also maintain historical trends and trend lines so that they can prioritize different accounts and teams. Some of them may need more help. We certainly see teams on kind of both ends of the spectrum, even from within the same company. Some teams within a company are mostly green, and by that I mean they practice excellent security hygiene, while other teams are mostly red, all within the same company. So speaking of this disparity among teams and customers, I've noticed that several customers and some in the financial services vertical are very mature. They have turned to automation and DevOps for provisioning and managing hundreds of AWS accounts. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what are you seeing organizations do to modernize their development process, to improve agility, meet business users' needs of fast releases? And how do security teams keep up with fast-moving cloud deployments?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Most of my customers just ask for a big red easy button and they go, I'm done. Unfortunately, one doesn't exist yet. a couple of years ago, our CISO, Stephen Schmidt, he shares best practices. And at reInvent, I think it was 2019, he was talking about his best practices, and he led with really emphasizing that security teams need to get involved in the development cycle. And that one really stuck with me. It resonated because it's as much about security as it is about collaboration, teamwork, and integration. And so it kind of goes down to that point of, I think there's really two key elements to going quickly. So one, back to security getting involved in development, security needs to become everybody's job. In order to move fast, it needs to just be integrated into the role of everyone, certainly everyone in engineering who's building applications and dealing with data. And it just can't be those folks with security in their job title. So that's key. I mean, that's so important. It's going to be able to, that's one big way to keep up, is by raising the awareness and creating the accountability. I think the other big piece, and you mentioned it as well, is automation. The best of intentions only get you so far. People don't mean to do malicious things, but when you're moving quickly, mistakes happen, and we can't afford the mistakes that can happen with security. So by first embedding it, raising awareness, and integrating security into the full development lifecycle, and then automation. And it's really kind of with a bold goal of, let's remove humans entirely from the pipeline. So let's make it so that it's fully automated, that there are checks, that code's getting, the vulnerability testing is happening automatically, the pipeline is stopping if something's not met. So really strive for that robust automation. So obviously that's the dream. I have a few customers actually who've achieved that dream, but it's a long path. But if you kind of take that as your North Star, I think that is really the key. So shifting left, embedding security into the automated pipeline. What that does is it makes the easiest path also the one that's most secure. And so that gives confidence to the business, to your risk team, to your auditors, and ultimately your customers, that it's going to be you're going to have the comfort to go fast because you're able to prove it, that's nothing happened. And again, I know it's a risk of belaboring this point, but automation is really the key. So really, if it can be automated, it should be automated. And I really want to emphasize that. It's funny, I have a customer who was asking me about the best practices for some of break glass monitoring for manual code deployments into the cloud. And I kind of looked quizzically and I said, the best practice is to not manually deploy into the cloud. You need to automate and drive that automation. There isn't a best practice for how to do the other monitoring. So, it's really getting to that point where you need to think bold and drive that, and it'll improve your control environment, obviously, but it will really help with that speed and agility, which of course is where the business value comes in. So yeah, Ram, I know you have a number of solutions in this space as well. What do you recommend? Is it along these same lines?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do that, I must say that you're very eloquent, and that I couldn't have said it better. Next time I'm having a customer conversation about shift left or DevSecOps, I'm gonna pull you into the meeting.
Perfect. I'll be there.
Yeah. And all kidding aside, I'm in 100% agreement with you regarding the need for automation for scale and speed. And I'm going to reuse the phrase that you used, get the humans out of the loop. I've heard this from other customers in one of our recent, when I say recent, probably pre-pandemic customer council, where one of the CISOs said, hey, our policies, no humans touch the keyboard during our cloud deployment process. Many of them were really talking about immutable infrastructure that they aspire for. So, and if that happens, and I'm sure we are getting there, if all application teams and DevOps teams are using automation, using infrastructure as code so that they don't have to manually make any changes, they're leveraging tools like AWS CloudFormation or Terraform, the only way security teams can keep up with such rapidly scaling, deployments is through automation in security also, right? So they need to use automated security tools for these infrastructure as code templates. And we recognize that. So at Palo Alto Networks, we have invested and continue to invest time and resources to help our customers with embedding both security and compliance checks. The 750 out of the box policies I talked about, we have all of them available as build time or design time policies so that customers can run these checks very early in the application development cycle. And there are several benefits to this, right? From catching and fixing these security issues early during the design and build process compared to finding those after deployment. One, it's obviously cheaper and faster to fix them while you're in deployment. And we have seen, or we believe there might be as much as 50% reduction in time to go live for these applications. So one of our recent acquisitions of a company called Bridgecrew, and Bridgecrew provides security and compliance checks, essentially these DevSecOps tools throughout the CI/CD pipelines, and that enables shift left initiatives that you mentioned. We have built several plugins. So we took a different approach and we built several plugins and continue to build more for tools and IDEs or development environments commonly used by developers, DevOps teams, and SRE teams. So tools such as VS Code or IntelliJ, your source code repos like GitHub and GitLab, CI/CD tools like Jenkins and Chef. We have built plugins from Prisma Cloud that customers can download. And by using these plugins, developers can bake in automated security scans at every step of the way, at every step of the CI/CD pipeline. And by doing so, they can go about their normal day-to-day activities without being slowed down by security teams or their periodic security reviews and assessments. So you get the benefit of DevSecOps, the DevSecOps nirvana state that we are all aspiring for. And this Prisma Cloud offering also serves as a bridge between application developers and security teams. As you know, this is a paradigm shift, right? They haven't really worked closely on a daily basis before. So this offering really provides that bridge between app developers, DevOps teams, SRE teams, and SecOps teams to collaborate throughout the life cycle of application development, right from design through the build through the release process.
That's great. It sounds like the perfect acquisition. It sounds like we're going. So I know we've covered a lot of ground. We're coming to the end of it here. And I really wanted to make sure, I know we've talked about AWS features, we've talked about Prisma Cloud features, but there's obviously a very close partnership between AWS and Palo Alto Networks. And I just want to make sure that we emphasize some of our better together stories. So with that in mind, can you highlight, a few of the benefits that show the power of our partnership?
Yeah, certainly. So, as you know, both AWS and Palo Alto Networks and Prisma Cloud, they are better together and working together. They provide very comprehensive security and defense in depth to our customers for their cloud environments. Our cloud security offerings are very complementary to some of the AWS native security tools. That we have, first used and then integrated and then extended several AWS services, such as the Security Hub. You mentioned a number of these, right? AWS Security Hub, Control Tower, AWS Inspector, Guard Duty, CloudTrail, and the list goes on. And we actually do leverage AWS Lambda functions in a lot of our auto remediation capabilities. So we've been very fortunate to have been the launch partners for some of the native tools I mentioned and some of the newer releases of these tools. In addition to all of these, Palo Alto Networks has achieved 3 AWS competencies, and we offer 8 solutions, security solutions on the AWS marketplace. Because of all of this, in the past 12 months, we've helped over 500, and that's a big number, 500 mutual customers, which of course includes many financial services organizations. And we've helped them in terms of agility, scalability, and security of their cloud infrastructure. So with that, let's wrap up this session. Jen, this has been really interesting and fun. I certainly enjoyed the stimulating discussion we had. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And I'm going to take you up on that offer to participate in a DevOps discussion with a mutual customer of ours. So thank you very much.
Yeah, certainly will do. And thank you to all of you for watching and joining us as well. Bye.